Hello, my beautiful butterflies, space blobs, creative spirits, deep divers into the unknown and the mystery. We are about to get into this Aquarius season and the big energies that it is bringing with it. But probably the most essential question here in these coming weeks is this idea of the delusional part of ourselves meeting the realist and redefining what each of these components means. Often we'll think about our realist as this kind of pessimist, this cynic, the one that is anxiously thinking about all the ways the world can go wrong, all the ways that we might mess up, when in fact a realist is going to be a part of ourselves that's able to respond to life appropriately and to be intertwined with it in a way that allows us to be alive. And the delusional part of ourselves isn't simply an escapist and isn't simply trying to help us to pretend that nothing is happening in the world, but is in fact the dreamer that helps us envision new worlds. And we need both of these parts. Aquarius is all about breaking down false dichotomies and allowing us to see from two different perspectives and realizing that they aren't at war at all. And in that liberation comes so much creative freedom. This is all about thinking in different ways, viewing our lives in different ways, getting to know ourselves in new formats. And I'm hoping today's conversation will help you feel really empowered to engage with Aquarian energy, engage with this coming season and the Lunar New Year in a way that feels really, really potent. So if you like to redefine archetypes, get into storytelling, figure out what's going on with your spirit, you should subscribe and stick around here. And let's get into this powerful Aquarius season. I am so drawn to Aquarian energy. I love it so much. I have such a huge crush on it, and it inspires me constantly in life. So I'm very grateful that we are heading into Aquarius season. This is our first Aquarius season with Pluto fully stationed here in this sign, which is a really interesting place to kind of check in with our Pluto journey so far. And yes, it does reflect on our changing culture and how that feels. But also, I think Aquarius is one of those sweet spots where we can do a lot of visioning and help get really clear on what it is that matters to us, and also get in touch with some of our new dreams that may be arising and some of the new ingredients. I think Aquarius holds a really special place in the whole cosmos and in the whole world of archetypes because it really helps us to hold multiple viewpoints at one time and to dissolve some of the false dichotomies that might be kind of keeping us stuck in the same loop. It can help us get really creative, to fantasize, but also to find real ways to put our feet on the ground and start to move toward what we mean. And for me, this is a very grounding and liberating sign, and it really combines so many elements to it. It really is all about melting down false dichotomies, because even if we look at the archetype of Aquarius, just in its innate qualities, it's already doing that just by the fact that it's the fixed air sign, because the fixed nature of Aquarius is all about the long form version of things, the foundations we build, the ways we show up over time, the devotion we commit to something that we really care about, a vision that we want to see through. And the air sign quality of Aquarius is all about the changing nature of things, the mutability of things, the fact that we're constantly changing states and mastering that. So I already just love the fact that this is the fixed air sign. And then, of course, it's also ruled by two planets, Saturn and Uranus. Similarly here, Saturn, all about foundations. How do we show up? How do we seriously take the change in our culture and the way we take care of each other and all of these big questions? And then Uranus. What does change look like? How do we shake things up? How do we revolutionize things? How do we shift the way that we are living life? So it really holds both the holding still long enough to hear and the movement and the change. And of course, Aquarius is connected to themes of friendship, community, belonging, humanitarianism, the collective. It's kind of like how we fit into the big picture. And a lot of times, Aquarius is associated with freedom of expression. A lot of Aquarians are really good at being weird in the best way possible. And I think this is because, funnily enough, when we no longer have to be exceptional, we no longer have to be in a competitive mode where we have to get to the top of the mountain above everybody else, it actually frees us to be expressive. And it's one of those places I love to think about. If I take away all the pressure to excel at something, to be picked out of 100 million people as the one or whatever, I take all of that away. What do I actually want to do? What do I actually care about? What is actually interesting? And often I will get much closer to what I actually want to express than any of the times that I'm thinking about how I have to express as an individual. And so there's this liberation as well in leaning into that collective sense of belonging and leaning into the fact that we aren't just little individuals locked in this isolated, lonely experience, but we are part of something bigger that then actually liberates our spirits to express themselves. So one of the first things I want to talk about here, I just have a few themes that I think are so helpful when thinking through this Aquarius season and what's going on. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about was this communion with the delusional part of ourselves and the realist part of ourselves. And even those phrases I think are really interesting, and we're going to break those down a little bit, because for me, these two parts of ourselves, a lot of times we're sold that we are in a kind of a war. There's like this escapist dreamer part of ourselves that's just over here in La La Land, like flitting about and never really doing anything. And then this realist part of ourselves that has control of the world and knows what's going on. And I think all of us have had this feeling at times where it's like, how do I reconcile these two? How do I work with these two? But I think this Aquarius season specifically is going to encourage there to be a communion between these two parts, because I think that this idea of the delusional one and the escapist one and the realist one, this is all culturally conditioned lenses. Because first of all, let's talk about the realist. A lot of times the realist is sold to us as the one who kind of can see what's going to go wrong and is going to call it out and is going to act on it. But a lot of times we're also taught that to be a realist means to think about everything that can go wrong, to worry constantly about it, to have a negative bias, to always be looking out for danger, because, biologically, we are kind of wired to look out for danger, right? However, that's not always the most realistic portrait of the world around us, of the moment that we are in. So if we really want to liberate the realist in us, this is going to be a part of us that's able to kind of get in touch with their senses and look around and just take note of what is important and what really needs our attention. It's about being in responsive intertwinement with the world rather than in constant high alert anxiety, right? So already, like, we're being invited to explore that realist side of ourselves. Now, on the other side, the wild dreamer is often considered delusional and inactive and unhelpful and often off into La La Land where nothing ever gets done. However, the wild dreamer is where we start to unlock visions of a world that takes us out of some of the horrors of the norms that we have set for ourselves. I mean, not us individually sitting here, but culture has built up over all of this time, all of the norms that we're now sitting with and really questioning. So for me, these two aspects of ourselves, they're not at war at all. In fact, they want to work together. The wild dreamer and the realist wants to combine to explore new ways of doing things. Our fantasy self helps us to envision new things, and our realist self helps us to respond in real time and slowly but surely build into that. So I just encourage you to kind of think about how these two parts of you work together, and that they each actually have an essence beyond the way we've been taught that false dichotomy, and that a lot of times we can really get in touch with them. Another theme that comes up anytime Aquarius is mentioned is being weird or marching to the beat of your own drum. Aquarius suns are often stereotyped as being the weird ones, the ones that are doing the odd things, which, as far as stereotypes go, I mean, I feel like that's kind of the best one you could have. I love it. I'm here for, I'm drawn to the person in the room who I can tell is not doing things the way that they're supposed to be done, whatever that is. So as far as stereotypes go, I could think of worse ones. But one of the things that I'm going to be playing with this Aquarius season, and I really encourage all of us to do, is to just think about all of the norms that are around us. And I know this sounds so obvious, and I am preaching to the choir here, because in this space, I know most of us Like literally, we can't live a normal life. Probably if you're sitting here with me, you have tried to live a normal life and it has not been working. So we're already on the same page here as I'm sitting here talking with you, right? But it's interesting to just take it back to like, oh yeah, there's this whole set of norms that have been so ingrained in the culture around us that really sometimes they're even hard to see because they have been so normalized, they have been so ingrained. And those norms, a lot of them are just so unsustainable. They have made everybody sick, not even people who are neurodivergent or live life in a slightly different way, like so many of us in this community, including myself. But that like it's hurting everyone, right? And it's so interesting to think about what norms we just don't care about anymore. Like, what are those norms? What norms are you just ready to say like, no, I'm not playing by that norm, by that rule anymore? Where do you want to feel liberated? Where do you want to just stop keeping up appearances? Where do you no longer care about telling that story to that coworker or to that acquaintance in order to keep up the norm? Where do you no longer care if you have a norm of a certain appearance or the norm of a certain productivity level or a norm of any kind that is holding you in kind of like a torturous place in your life? This is a fantastic season to play around with that. And I really mean that in like the most playful of ways. That can be a really heavy topic to explore, but I think this can also just be a very liberated, playful, I don't care kind of place. It makes me think about Office Space, that movie from I think 1999. So I'm dating myself here. That's right, I am. That movie is all about a guy who goes to a hypnosis session, and stops caring about upholding all the norms. And it's amazing. But that's kind of the feel of this Aquarius season. And I'm just encouraging that. Like, I know it's bringing it back to basics, but sometimes the basics, it's like kind of like, wow, it's so true, the norms that we have set up for ourselves, and breaking those rules and breaking those norms and seeing what happens. Okay, the final theme I wanted to bring up for this Aquarius season before we get into our intuitive card reading is this idea of getting comfortable with a new comfort zone. And I'm a big proponent of not pushing too hard on this. I think so often self-improvement, especially in the American landscape, is all like, you got to push forward, you got to be in competition with yourself, you have to be outside of your comfort zone in an extreme way. That's the only way you're ever going to grow. And that's very tiring. And I think it's not actually totally accurate, because that can backfire and burn out our circuits and actually keep us stuck in the same loop of like overdoing it and then coming back and crashing over and over again. We don't want that. But with this idea that we're like recognizing new ingredients, we're recognizing norms we don't want to live with anymore. We're recognizing that something's shifting in our lives and in this larger culture. There is an invitation here as well, this Aquarius season, to just think about how we want to gently shift our comfort zone in a way that feels really, really good. So, just kind of noticing where we've kind of gotten into like a place of maybe we sometimes, it's easy to self-sabotage ourselves every time we get kind of close to expanding our lives. Maybe we don't feel worthy of peace or stability. Like sometimes too, we can deny a comfort zone that would be really, really helpful, one that allows us to have a calm nervous system or to live life a little bit more simply, because we don't feel worthy of it. So we keep ourselves in a familiar zone, even though it may not be an actual comfort zone in the sense of supporting us. Perhaps it scares you to be visible or to tell somebody what you need to tell them. But this is a really great season to just start practicing into, gently but slowly, the places and the spaces that we need in order to grow forward and to make them our comfort zone very, very gently. So for me, like, funnily enough, I think about peace in my system and wanting more peace and more wild dreaming in my life. And yet it's one of the places that I often have to do the most active practice and say, hey, I'm allowed to just have peace today. And that building of that as my stable ground, as my comfort zone, is actually where I'm able to then go for things that matter to me. but just slowly starting to practice into visioning ourselves into this next space, getting comfortable with it, getting familiar with it, noticing where we might want to sabotage or shut down or get into freeze or fawn state every time we think about it, and gently, but very, very gently introducing it and allowing ourselves to step a little bit more into it. This is a fantastic time to get creative with that, to play with that, to allow ourselves to start getting comfortable with our new ingredients. And it really is something that takes like some time and intention to do gently and consistently. And this is a great time to start doing that and feeling into it. And now we will just feel through our intuitive tarot, get in touch with some archetypes, feel what's coming up together, and just take a moment to reflect and feel through. As always, I encourage any of you to, as you see these images, you're going to get your own intuitive hits and wisdom that come through. And that is what this space is all about, getting in touch with ourselves. But I'd be really curious, how are each of you feeling in this season right now? Because it's such an interesting time in the world. Like, I have moments where I feel so much hope. Like, I can tell people are connecting in new ways, and we're taking care of ourselves in ways that we haven't for a little while. And there's this kind of recognition of wanting to live lives that are simpler and more connected, and all of that's getting called forward. And yet at the same time, we're living with a lot of contrast right now and a lot of like pain points, and it's a very complex world, and many of us are feeling that physically. This is a very sensitive community of souls, and like we feel it in our bodies, and we're managing that. So I'm feeling both of those things simultaneously. I'd be really curious to hear how you're feeling right now. Five of Swords. I kind of love that this card is coming out here in this reading. Five of Swords is such a nuanced card because it can represent so many things. It's all about perspective. And it's also a card that calls forth self-trust. We can give authority away to people constantly, and be looking for somebody to give us permission to exist. But the Five of Swords says you've got to come home to yourself. High Priestess, I love it. I love it so much. There you go. I mean, when I see these two, it's this interesting dialogue between two parts of ourselves. The Five of Swords, you could almost say, is like the part of ourselves that's used to living in the world, that's used to kind of looking over the shoulder, trying to figure out what is what are the intentions, what am I supposed to be doing, what are these people trying to do, kind of trying to analytically figure it out. And the High Priestess is that deep knowing. The deep initiation into something quiet and clear and peaceful and calm that shows us the way forward. I think having this kind of back and forth energy is really, really helpful because it allows us to discern. I actually like feeling the part of me that's trying to analyze my way into an answer, and then shifting into the part of me that is just kind of the eternal part that's listening and feeling, because when I switch between them, I can tell which is which. So you might want to experiment with that this Aquarius season. If you have big questions in your life, you have things you don't know which way to go, you don't know if you should go this way or that way, you might want to experiment jumping between these two and just like feel through them. You could journal from each of these perspectives. You'll find that you get a lot of clarity as you do that, and you'll kind of understand which modality you're in and be able to differentiate between the two. And that can help you get a lot clearer on where you want to put your energy. I want to bring one more card into this conversation. It just feels right in this moment. Page of Swords, news bringer, clear, bringing energy. The Page of Swords is definitely an energy of change. Like, it brings in this kind of, it's like opening a window after a long winter. And you open that window and this fresh breeze blows in with all this new information. Pages are obviously like these news bringers, they're messengers. And so they'll often bring us in a new piece of wisdom. What I think is really interesting is we have the intuiting, analytical and intuiting energies here. asking the question, waiting for the answer, allowing the answer to come through, and then we have the new ingredient coming in. So I love that we're ending here with this Aquarius season chat with the messenger bringing in news and ideas, because I think this Aquarius season, many of us are going to get a lot of aha moments. A lot of pieces are going to come together and make sense and be clear. But I think the caveat here in this reading is that the best page of swords energy that will come through is going to come after we've had the peace and the quiet and the listening that the high priestess brings us. So we need that in order to bring in this new information. If we try to force and rush and analyze ourselves into the future, it's not going to go as smoothly. So we'll have to remember to take those times, take those breaths. It doesn't mean sitting and meditating 24 hours a day. It means those little breaks throughout the day, those little moments that we take, even for 30 seconds or 1 minute, that just center us, that beautiful things coalesce. And I just want to encourage us to keep exploring that as we move through this Aquarius season. I would love to see you in my Sensitive Spirits space over on Patreon. We have so many good resources there. I'm right now preparing the Wild Dreaming series for Venus retrograde, which will be beginning right at the end of February as we enter into Pisces season. I'm so excited to go through this Wild Dreaming series with you. I also do weekly chats. It's a really beautiful space. So if you're feeling sensitive, overwhelmed in the world, it's a wonderful place to come be and hang out and vision and do art with me and just get some wild dreaming moving in our systems. So I'd love to see you in that space. We also do live Zoom gatherings every single month together. So I'd love to see you over there. I love it when you are here. We have so much coming up. I'm going to get into the Lunar New Year in our next chat, which is just going to be coming up in a handful of days from when this video comes out. So that's coming up super soon. And then I'm also going to be talking about the big shifts coming up this year, because some really big shifts are going on with 4 major planets this year, and they are changing the energy quite a bit. So I wanted to talk about how to use that to kind of get in touch with your 2025 energy. So I'd love to see you back here in this space for those resources coming up in the next week or two. And of course, we have so much more that we are going to be exploring together. So I hope you have a beautiful Aquarius season. Let me know if you've listened to this far into the video. I just love that you've been sitting here with me this whole time. What is your word for this Aquarius season? What is your intention? I want to hear all about it. So leave me a comment. Let me know your word. Let me know your intention. Let me know your vision. How do you connect with Aquarius energy? I would love to hear. And I will see you all back here for our next chat so very, very soon.